Hello, welcome to Robyn's Roost. Today we're going to be playing with some spritzers. These come in a 2-pack and they're just what they say. They hold water or alcohol or whatever, and you spritz them. And then we're going to be using some watercolor paper to make a fun background. Now you can do this with any stamp sets that you want. I'm going to be using some pretty butterflies from the Beautiful Butterflies stamp set. Let's flip the camera and get started. So to do this background technique, I'm starting with a piece of the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. It comes in 5x7 sheets, and it's a real heavyweight watercolor paper, so you can actually get it pretty wet before it starts to warp. So I'm using just a leftover piece from something else to show you this technique, but you can cut it to any size. You can also, leave it large, do your technique, and then cut down the pieces to where you really like them, because every piece is going to be unique. So I've got my large block. It's the biggest one that Stampin' Up! Sells. It's block F, and it's 4x6 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And then I have my my bright Stampin' Write markers. And if you took advantage of the starter kit special during Celebration, which ended on February 28th, you could have gotten this pack of markers for free, plus another one of the color collections. So the markers come in 4 different color collections. There's the brights, the subtles, the regals, and the neutrals. And they're great markers for using for this technique. Your Stampin' blends will not work for this because they are not water-based, they're alcohol-based. These are water-based markers. This is the same ink in these as is in our ink pads. So for this technique, you're going to kind of decide, if you have a stamp in mind that you're going to use, you'll kind of think, okay, the flower is going to be here. So you're going to decide where you want your colors, just depending on what you're going to stamp on it. Or if you're just going to stamp, words across it, then it's not going to be so important. So I am going to, let's see, my piece is about the size of this paper pumpkin logo on the background here. So I'm just going to put this over top of here so I kind of know where to put my ink. And I'm kind of thinking that I'm going to use the big butterfly stamp, but it may not work out when I get everything on here and it dries. So I'm just going to, maybe we'll make him kind of in the yellows. Butterflies always look good yellow. So I'm just going to yellow is a hard color to see on there. And then let's do some, no, not orange. Let's see. So you're just going to squiggle on the markers. Maybe we'll just do 2 colors. We'll do the yellow and the blue. Okay. So it's really, really hard to see on here, I know, but there is ink on there. Let's hope. So then we're going to take our piece of paper and a spritzer. This is your friend for this technique. So I usually do this not on my, let's see, but I wanted to show you about how wet I get it. I don't want to get everything wet underneath it though. So I'm going to take my spritzer and I'm going to spritz my watercolor paper until it's wet. You can kind of see it's sucking in that water. It's curling up a little bit. I don't want it to pool like this. I want it to soak it in. So I'm just going to kind of take off any spots where it's pooling. And I'm going to leave it sit for a minute. This is the part I'm not good at, leaving it sit for a minute. So once it's soaked in the water, and I probably don't have it all soaked in, but then you're going to take your prepared block and spritz it. So you're re-wetting the ink. Then you can kind of see it a little bit better. Then you're just going to lay that on there. Looks like I probably didn't get it quite wet enough in the corners. But that's okay. Like I said, each piece is going to have a unique look. So now I don't want all that wet pooling. So I'm just going to blot it gently because I don't want to take away all the color. And then we're going to let it dry. Now, this is pretty dry at this point, but if you wanted, I'll pull in a card that I stamped this flower image fairly soon when the paper was still wet, and you can see that it ran a little bit because I wanted it to look like that. And then I waited until it was drier and stamp the words, so those are sharp. So you have that choice. You can either stamp right away if you want your image to look very watercolored. You could even stamp it with, like I did this with black, but you could stamp it in a lighter color and then it would kind of fade in and look more watercolory. So for this one, I've let it get pretty dry. And at this point, my original idea was to stamp this huge butterfly on here and then put a greeting across it. And it would still work, but I've changed my mind after I saw the way the colors turned out because I really like the way this yellow went across here. So I'm either going to do Time to Celebrate, and I am using the Beautiful Butterflies stamp set. So it has that big one and it has two smaller ones. So I'm thinking I'm going to do the two smaller ones instead of the big guy because I have these really, really pretty yellow streak across it. Oh, it is still a little wet. You see the way the ink kind of runs? I thought I had it drier than that. So we've got that guy. Now we need to decide. We could do just a Time to Celebrate across here. Oh, choices, choices. That's the one thing. Like I said, each card is going to turn out differently, and we don't want to do that because we know the paper's a little bit wet yet. But we also have this little guy that we could add, but he's kind of like meant to be like coming down on a flower. If we could figure out where we're going to have our Time to Celebrate, he could be like coming down on the words. And we definitely have to let it dry a little bit more before we do the words. I don't mind my butterflies being fuzzy, but I want my words to be sharp. So I am going to cover my ink and be back in a little bit. Okay, now I think it's pretty darn dry. Now, if you were impatient, you could also take your heat tool and dry it. But now we've got the Time to Celebrate. So this is going to be a birthday card. Yes, and that's nice and sharp. Now, like I told you at the beginning, sometimes it's nice to do a bigger piece and then cut it down. And I think I'm going to cut this actually here. I'm going to leave my little dry part, but I'm going to cut off just a little bit of this on the edge. So I've cut this down to 4.5 by 3 3¼ That's what it was to begin with, the 3¼ So then I have, because I used Coastal Cabana, I was going to put the lemon lolly in here too as well, but at least, is that the color this is? No. This is Daffodil Delight. Maybe that's why it didn't look right, because I was thinking lemon lolly. But I'm just going to come in with a Coastal Cabana base. And black is always really good for, now I have to decide if I want it matted tight and centered. Yes, I think so. So let me just cut the end of this off. So I'd really like to pop up the butterfly layer, but well, I think I'm going to. When you, even with the Fluid 100, the paper will get a little bit warped. So we're going to need to put more dimensionals on here than you typically would, because we don't want it showing that warp. Now, I don't know about you, but I always use my edges as well. Actually, this side works really well if you want, you know, like a narrow strip for doing, oh, come on, Robyn, shaker cards. It works good for that. Of course, you can buy the foam strips for that as well. But when you're being frugal, like us crafty ladies need to be, because we buy so much stuff, right? Use those. And I do not normally put this many dimensionals on. Usually I just do the corners and one in the middle, but I'm worried about the warping from the watercolor technique. Yes, I like that. Now, I think we need just some plain old sparkle gems. Mine are the very, very old version, because at some point I bought lots of them. And now I can kind of see in my mind dew in the morning and the sun sparkling. But that's just me. I always kind of have a vision in my head. Okay, so there's, sorry, I'm growling. There's the front of our card. And my light is not the best ever. Okay, so now I have a piece of white that I cut, it's 5 1/2, so it goes the whole way across, and 2 3/4. Oh, this is funny. I couldn't find my my tape runner. It's sitting right beside me, like it could bite me. Oh, and as I'm adhering this, I'm thinking to tell you, always stamp before you adhere. So we'll see if I screw up. Okay, so I want to do the happy birthday, which I mounted and put somewhere here. Oh, this is so silly. I can't believe that I glued this down. Okay, I've jinxed myself now. So we're going to have happy birthday. And then we have that fun little butterfly that's like he's landing on something. And he's going to come down right here. And we happen to have all these beautiful markers out here, right? So let's just make him, I don't know, we could either do him yellow or we could do him in the Coastal Cabana maybe. Let's do him in the Coastal Cabana. Well, let's see. We kind of have yellow butterflies out here, don't we? Let's make him yellow. And the beautiful thing about the Stampin' Write markers is that they won't bleed through. If I had done this right directly on the card base, so you wouldn't see this ugly bleed through on the back. I love the alcohol markers, the Stampin' Blends, but they do bleed through. So when you want to stamp on something that you're going to see the backside, use the Stampin' Write markers instead. Just like people, tools all have things they're good at and things they're not, right? So there is our watercolor wash background, or I'm not sure what really we call this technique. I'm always bad at remembering names, but it's the technique where you take and scribble on a clear block and spritz it to go onto the paper to transfer your ink. So hope you enjoyed. Have fun with this technique, and remember, each and every card is going to be unique. That's what's special about this. So they're definitely made with love, handmade. Thanks for stopping by at the Roost. Hope you have a great day.